Hello and welcome to this joint EIFL, Coko and WACREN webinar about Phenom. And Phenom is a manuscript submission and peer review platform from Hindawi. It's free and open source. It's multi-tenanted and it's part of Hindawi's collaboration with Coko, which uses Coko's open source PubSweet framework. And we already had a webinar with Adam from Coko, who is here with us today as well, about Coko's approach to collaborative open source publishing infrastructures. So it's the second one in the series. And we're really excited to have Andrew Smeall with us today. Thanks a lot, Andrew, for being here, and over to you now.
Thank you. So thank you guys for giving me the chance to speak to you today. I'm gonna present about Phenom, which is like Irina said, our open source publishing platform. But first, just a quick background on, if I can get this right, on who Hindawi is. So Hindawi is an open access publisher of 220 journals across a broad scope of fields in STEM and medicine. We were founded in 1997 and we converted to open access in 2004. So we were among that early generation of open access publishers like PLOS and Biomed Central. But we're fairly large from an independent publisher perspective. Let's say we're not one of the big four, obviously, but we have some scope to our publishing program, and we have been on our own peer review software since 2007. So we were used to managing our own platform, but we were finding that the system we were using was getting a bit creaky, hadn't been updated in a long time. It had some out-of-date technology. It also followed some out-of-date architectural practices. It was very monolithic and difficult to debug and maintain. So we began the process 2 years ago of thinking about how we could rebuild our peer review software from scratch. We knew we wanted to be able to keep experimenting and iterating quickly and controlling our own roadmap. And for those reasons, it made sense to us to keep building something ourselves, to keep the software in-house if we could. But we also, as an open access publisher, saw that the world had moved on a bit from just open access to this concept of open science. And I think anyone will struggle to get a clear definition of open science, but to us that meant more than just making our papers freely available at publication. It also meant maybe encouraging the growth of research in new markets. It meant expanding research outside of academia with citizen science. It meant also things like open source. So making not just the research itself available, but the infrastructure that makes the research possible available. So combining those two goals led us to think about, what is the true value of open infrastructure? And we think that, there have been some troubling trends in our industry of research communication where there's been a lot of consolidation among publishers and among publishing technology providers. And that consolidation creates a lock-in effect where there's economies of scale and economies of scope where you're so used to using tools from one technology provider or one big publisher that it's just natural that you'll do your research on their tools, you'll discover research through their tools, you'll publish research through their tools, and eventually create these big monopolistic markets. And we thought one way to combat that as a smaller independent publisher was to form communities where we could collaborate on building open infrastructure, because together we can create the sort of scope and scale that can compete with these bigger guys. So for us, that means open source, which we'll talk about today. Also encouraging open data, so not only making research data more available, but also making the data that's locked inside publishers' data silos more available. So being able to extract data and do text and data mining on the research that we're publishing. Also open integration, so making it as free and as easy as possible to integrate with our tools and for us to integrate with other people who have the same philosophy. And then open contracts, trying not to have secretive deals like the traditional big publishing deals have been for so long, but rather short-term contracts that are relatively transparent, can be talked about openly, and don't create this legal lock-in, which is just as bad as technological lock-in. So a bit about why we decided to go down this open source route. Open source, first of all, to clarify one thing about it, it doesn't mean free as in you don't have to pay any money for it, right? It means free as in it can be shared freely using an appropriate license. Building open source software still requires developers to build it. It still requires developers to host it and the technical resources to host it. So it doesn't mean that it's entirely free. But what it does mean is that it enables people to share tools and to build upon each other's work so that we aren't constantly reinventing the same thing over and over again. Does open source make better software? Not necessarily. I mean, you can make great closed source software and you can make terrible open source software. It's really doesn't say anything about the underlying quality of the code, although it does mean that you can look at the code yourself and decide whether it's quality rather than having to take someone's word for it. Is open source better for researchers? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I don't think most researchers are fundamentally concerned about the technology platforms where they're publishing research. They perhaps do care about the user experience that they get, the ease of publication, and they care about the speed of publication. And that can all be helped with good technology. But at the end of the day, I think researchers are mostly concerned with the quality of the journals where they're publishing and the editorial feedback that they receive. So I wouldn't say that open source is necessarily something we do for researchers. Is it better for developers? This, I think there is an argument that open source does attract better developers. This is because when you're building open source projects, developers get to take credit for their work themselves publicly and openly. So rather than, say, a company that they work for taking credit for their work, the world can see what they've contributed to these projects. So that's rewarding. Also, they get to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They get to see this global community of people who are solving the same problems and contributing to the same challenges. And that's, inspiring. I think it's always nice to feel like your work matters. And when you're working within open source communities, you get that constant feedback that other people care about what you're doing. And also it's fun. I mean, it means that you get to talk to new people, attend meetings with people you haven't met who have a shared set of interests and a shared set of skills. And that leads to happy, fun, motivated developers, which is great. And that means that you can attract to a project perhaps better talented people than you might otherwise if you were just asking them to work within a black box. And the other great reason I think open source is important is that it really is better for technology buyers or technology consumers in academic publishing. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the effects of lock-in. But as a bigger publisher, we also work with societies and we partner with other publishers to provide publishing services. And when we do that with an open source platform, we can say to them, you know what, if you ever are dissatisfied with us, you can walk away and not just walk away from the contract, but you can walk away and take the publishing platform and all the data with you. So if you're a smaller society or a small university press that doesn't have necessarily the resources to run a development team yourself, you could work with someone like Hindawi. And then if ever you found that Hindawi wasn't meeting your needs, you could just bring in another publishing provider. You could bring in a Wiley. You could bring in, you could find your own, say, outsourced development shop that could do the work for you, and they could just take over your platform seamlessly and run it for you. And of course, that comes with a cost, but it's a great way to be able to put your money where your mouth is and say that the services we provide are genuinely about service and not about creating moats and barriers that make it more difficult for societies and universities to move between publishing providers. So at Hindawi, to summarize a bit, we felt that open source aligned with our open science goals. So it really contributes to a vision of the research communication world that we want to create. It preserves this vibrant, competitive publishing market where smaller providers can thrive, and it isn't just about consolidation. And it reduces barriers to interoperability, which means that we can benefit from the work that others have done and create really cool products that move the research world into new directions, because we don't have to build everything ourselves. We can work with other people that are doing interesting things. For us as a commercial company, we can attract societies or other publishers who want services from us, and it makes us able to do that in, I think, a more sustainable and healthy way. And it also helps us improve our product that we also use for our own journals, because these outside partners can scrutinize what we're doing, provide feedback. They can actually look at the code and software themselves, or even contribute to it in some cases. And then finally, the classic benefits of open source. It lets us reuse what's already there, collaborate with external parties to distribute costs, benefit from the expertise of other people, and attract talented developers. And the one I skipped there, I think, reduce variation and complexity. I think that's really important, and I think that's a good time to talk about why we work with Coko and what Coko brings. I think an important part of the Coko community, and working with people like Adam, but also with EIFL and University of California Press and Europe PubMed Central and all the other big players in that community, has been that we see a vision for publishing technology where you don't have to have necessarily a bespoke workflow for every journal, or a bespoke workflow for every editorial model. There should be less variation, less complexity in publishing. That's going to benefit everyone. It's going to mean that papers can get published more quickly, that there's lower switching costs when authors or editors move between journals. Everything will look familiar, everything will work in familiar ways. And this ultimately reduces waste. It reduces turnaround times. It means that information can be shared more quickly with readers, which ultimately accelerates the benefit or the impact that research can have on society. So Phenom, what is Phenom? So Phenom is the name of our end-to-end publishing platform that we're building. And that means not just peer review, but really the whole cycle of running a publisher. So it starts with commissioning and attracting articles, creating special collections, commissioning review articles, things like that. Those all feed into a submission portal and a peer review system, which then go out to an editorial quality system that we call screening, where they're checked for various common issues. We verify the author identities, we verify their affiliations, we run papers through Authenticate, all the basic quality checks that publishers can do. We have an invoicing platform. As an open access publisher, our business model is based on article processing charges, and so we have a platform to power that. It then feeds into a production system. So that's a dashboard where typesetters and XML creators can work on, can take a Word document and turn it into a structured, scholarly XML document that is richly tagged and indexable and searchable, and also goes through a proofing stage where authors can provide feedback on that document, and as they always have through galley proofing. And finally serves to a hosting and display solution where the articles can be read and consumed online, and also syndicated to other databases like, let's say, PubMed or Crossref, or places that index articles or track articles in various ways. And then sitting behind all that is a component that we call control, which is where we do some centralized features like user management or reporting or email template management or global settings. What I'm going to focus on today is review, screening, and a little bit of invoicing, just to show you those are the platforms that we have live right now, and we use them for some of our own journals. And the other systems are all things that we're working on. And as we build them, we develop them in the open, and we contribute everything to our open source repositories. So they're all there, and anyone can look at them and see how we're building them and what the general roadmap is for them. Our plans for the future, quickly before I get into the demo. Right now we have this live on 5 of our journals, and we are working on issues around how you migrate manuscripts on and off the platform, because we think that's really important for anyone that wants to come on this in the future who has an existing publishing program would need a good way to bring those manuscripts on, including in-progress manuscripts or historical manuscripts. And integrations with external services, like I described before, Authenticate or Crossref, or things that we need to integrate with to publish articles at scale. As we solve those issues, we plan to bring all of Hindawi's journals onto this software early next year. So it's a big task that we're undertaking, but we also think that's a really important proof point to show anyone that's interested in the platform that, hey, it works for Hindawi. Hindawi has a large scale program with journals in lots of different subject areas. So there should be a fit somewhere for people that are interested. And we're working with a few partners now to launch them on the system. So also there will be some people that aren't, some journals that aren't part of Hindawi's own portfolio, but are run by other societies or publishers, so that we can understand how those relationships should work and what the best way to do them is. So I thought I'd quickly do a demo. This is what shows you a little bit how the design has changed over time. I'm just going to jump out of the presentation and jump over to here. So this is the dashboard for the review system. This is live. It's a demo environment, so this isn't real manuscripts, but you can see what we'll do here. I'm logged in as an author. You can see that in the top right. I'm just going to submit a paper quickly. I know probably some of you have seen publishing happen before, so it's not going to be the most interesting thing, but I think it helps show how far along we are, and you can judge for yourselves if this is something that you might be interested in adopting. I'm going to pick a test journal that I created. We have some customizable submission pages where you can create, say, legal and technical questions that you might want to have as part of your program. I'm going to write, let's see if I can spell that properly. Pick a historical. So this is all dummy data. You can add additional authors. Pick a country. You can, reorder the authors to make sure you get the order that you want. We have these, again, are customizable questions based on article type or journal, depending on what your requirements are. I'll just fill in some dummy data for now. We have a pretty simple submission system. We like to keep it that way. We think the publisher should take on the work of converting the documents, but of course you could say adapt this and add separate upload areas for figures or tables and things like that. But we like to keep everything in one place, and then we'll do the separation ourselves. Submit a manuscript. So that's been submitted. And if you refresh the page, there you'll see the new manuscript here. Now, I'm going to jump over here for a second. This is the admin, an admin view. We have a sort of staff role where that person can see all the manuscripts in the system if they need to support the authors in some way. So I'm just going to jump back to, sorry, the Zoom controls are blocking me here. I'm going to jump back here and look for that manuscript I just submitted. You can see it shows up there. This is an editorial assistant on that journal. That's another staff role where you can see the journal shows up there. So the next step of the process is for the article to go through quality assurance. So it comes over to a separate team on a different system that is seeing manuscripts come in, and they can do certain basic quality checks just to make sure that the manuscript is actually ready to go out for review. It's not missing any files or figures. It was submitted correctly to the right journal and things like that, just to save editors some time so they don't have to process a lot of manuscripts that aren't ready. They do take a few minutes to come across because there's some automated tests going on. So I have one ready, but just see if it's shown up yet. Yeah, so there it is. It's come through. So if you jump in here, you see it checks the language and word count. If, sometimes based on certain article types, there might be word count rules. It looks for things like authenticate. I actually uploaded a real manuscript that we've published before at Hindawi. So it's found it in authenticate and given it an overlap score. It's also found it in the system because I submitted it previously as a test. The screeners look through the manuscript that was submitted to see if anything's missing. They kind of do a general evaluation of what was submitted, make sure there's everything there that it needs to go to review. And they also just check the authors to make sure that the authors properly entered their names and emails and affiliations so that we can confirm with them that the manuscript that they genuinely wish to submit this manuscript. If we say approve this, it's now approved. And if I come back now to the account of the editor-in-chief, this test journal I set up has a very simple editorial model with an editor-in-chief, a handling editor, an academic editor sitting underneath the editor-in-chief who will manage the actual peer review. And then it'll go back to the editor-in-chief for approval. We have, in the system, you can sort of customize this to work a few different models. We have a model with sections. We have a model with associate editors who sit in a layer between the chief editor and the academic editors. And that can all be tweaked in various ways to compose a workflow that works. So if I refresh for this, what is going on? Now I'm having a bug. The perils of live demos. So it's come through here. Maybe it's just, well, I don't know what's happened there, but let me make sure. Well, I'll just resume this other one and make sure that, see if this one works instead. Sorry for the bug. These things happen. Something seems to be going wrong here, I'm sorry. So I'll just jump ahead and show you anyway. You've seen the basics. I'll jump ahead and show you some manuscripts I prepared in advance. So the chief editor opens a manuscript. They invite a handling editor. The handling editor can then invite reviewers. Those reviewers submit review reports. It's all managed through email alerts with templates that you can edit and customize. So the emails will go out to authors or reviewers or editors based on which actions are needed. At the final stage, the paper will come back for a final quality assurance process where someone can review similar checks to the screeners at the beginning and can also take a look at the peer review cycle to make sure that the versions are correct, that the authors actually responded to the reviewer comments, that they've uploaded all the editable files that might be needed to go into production and typesetting, and they can approve the manuscript at that stage. And when all that happens, an email will come in to the authors, if I can find my email again, will come in to the authors. Oh no, that's the presentation. That's this webinar. Sorry, guys. That's the same thing. There we go. An email will come in to the authors where they can submit payment details. So provide information. And process the invoice through various I've run into a bug here. Process the invoice through various payment providers like PayPal or credit card receipts or things like that. So sorry for the technical difficulties there, guys. It's the perils of running on a demo environment that is under constantly being updated. But those are the pieces that we have live today. And if you come across, if you jump across to our GitLab account, which I will include in, I'll actually include in the presentation that we'll send around, you can see all the code that we demoed today. So in here, we're in the process of moving everything into a single repository where you'll be able to see all these components, and we'll have instructions for how you can set them up yourselves locally or host them in a cloud hosting environment. We're hoping at some point in the future to be able to provide hosted instances ourselves, but that's still a bit of a ways out, probably something for next year. But certainly it's already available with instructions for you to get stuck into the code, or to get your developers stuck into the code. And we're also available, I'm available by email anytime if you have questions. You can also find us on the Mattermost channel that Coko hosts, where we have the whole PubSweet community there. So not just Hindawi, but also EIFL or the other big players in that community, if you want to mix and match between our environments or ask questions about why we took different approaches. So I think I'll stop there. And then if anyone has any questions or wants to look at something else or anything really, just let me know. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. And thanks for being brave to use live demo. We'll know that these things happen. So yes, please, if you have any questions to Andrew, type them in a chat or in a Q&A functionality. Maybe I can start with my question. What's your timeline with further developments?
So the very big next piece that's coming is we will release the whole production side of the environment. So that will be coming in April next year. And once that's done, this really will be an end-to-end system. The piece that's probably the most tricky is, for us, I think, is the display piece, the hosting piece at the end. And that's something where really every partner and publisher we've talked to wants a lot of customization and really the ability to make something bespoke for themselves. And we think it's not an area where it's as easy as for us to provide a one-size-fits-all solution. So what we may have is just a very simple hosting solution at the end of it that's not quite as customizable as we would like, but we'll make sure that the system can plug into, say, Drupal or WordPress or any other website really website framework that you can think of. But apart from that, we'll have all those other components I talked about. So everything from, say, the ability to commission articles through to managing a typesetting, XML typesetting process. Not the tools to do the XML typesetting itself, but the tools to manage the process. So to triage work and send it to a typesetting process, get back some typeset XML, run that through a proofing experience for authors, and then ultimately distribute it to a website.
Thanks a lot. Any other questions to Andrew?
Yeah, if there's no questions, please feel free to email me anytime. If you want a demo that hopefully would run more smoothly, it can set up different roles for you on a test environment to check it out. Or if you just have general questions about our roadmap or feedback about what we're building.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. And I'll share Andrew's slides with all of you. And as we have Happiness Chioke joining us from Covenant University in Nigeria, I also wanted to mention that we've been working with Coko and with WACREN on a coalition for open access publishing infrastructures in Africa, discussing community-based approaches to developing open and shared publishing infrastructures. So you'll hear more about that in the coming year, because we're still in the discussion phase. And thanks again, Andrew, for joining us and for sharing your exciting developments. And we look forward to new release in April. And
yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure.
And happy seasonal holidays. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot for joining us today, and have a nice weekend, and we'll be in touch with more webinars and news. Thank you. Bye. I'll be closing the meeting shortly. Bye.